Today I have with us Joe, who is a maker educator at Chimera, which is a makerspace. So, welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Tell us a little bit about your makerspace.
We're Chimera Arts in Sebastopol, California, the home of the maker movement. Our space is public, opens to the community. We are a subscriber-based membership, pays most of the bills, and the other covers the rent. The rest of it is classes and donation. We're a nonprofit. So we have about 180 active members. People to come in and use our tools. I guess it's a standard makerspace layout. We have laser cutters, 3D printers, vinyl cutters. We have a full wood shop. We have a full metal shop, CNC machines. Actually, we have a little usual. We have a full jewelry studio as well. A lot of classes go through the jewelry studio. Knife forging is another popular activity.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we have all that stuff, and so people come in and they either just take classes or they sign up and then we train them and they come in and make their projects, and so that's what they do.
How long have you guys been around?
So we're 11 years now. uh,
Wow.
yeah, so we've been 11 years, and so I've been with Chimera for about, I think, 5 or 6 years, president of the board and sort of the acting executive director as well. I teach there. I teach the laser cutting and Arduino classes, as well as offer a lot of things. People come in with the makerspace too. There's just a lot of people I want to make a thing.
Mm.
So membership isn't really what they need, and so a lot of times we'll just come in and help them make their project that's quick, and say just leave a donation, and we leave it at that. So that's what we do here.
Can you tell me a little bit about like your membership population, maybe the composition or what they're primarily interested in? Because it'd be nice to know what your community is like as well.
So the community, so basically, the core community, I would say, of our makerspace is our volunteer staff. So we have no paid staff. It's
Okay.
all volunteer. And so I have a team of about 10 or so volunteers. So basically the idea is that we have someone at the site every day, so
Hmm.
for working hours. And primarily that is so when people come in that we give tours and then sign up new members and generally help like that. Of course, they don't know everything about everything in the shop. So if
Sure.
they need a specific thing, they need to make sure to make an appointment with the appropriate expert. Obviously, it's local.
Yeah.
We don't get people I don't think we have any from San Francisco. And so generally it's within Sonoma County.
Okay.
And the core of them is like within probably 20 miles. And in terms of what, I would say the makeup of the audience is our membership. It's all over the place. I don't think there's like a specific group. Of course, we have the retirees working on projects, and so I mean, for a lot of people, what we are is like people don't have to invest in their own workshop, right?
Right.
Rent
Right.
their own space, and so we do have
Yeah.
people. They come in there and they're making their cabinetry, and so
Okay.
sometimes it's a lot. And our churn is very high. So if
Sure.
you
Of
look at
course.
how many people we have, and how many members do we have from 2016? A little tiny bit. How many members do we have from who started in 2023, 2024? Maybe half of them. So a lot of people do come in, they work on projects, or, and it's the model, just like a health club. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then they don't do it so much. And then they realize they've been paying for it and they cancel their subscription. So, and that's a lot of that's most of our, when people leave the space. It's just that they've moved, they didn't do what they think they were going to be doing, or they're done with
Mhm.
it. Yeah, so we never have anybody go like, this place sucks. It's just like just the circumstances for their personal endeavors. So yeah, and so and then we have a jewelry program, and so where we
Okay.
so that's skews a little female, but there are a lot of male jewelers as well. It's actually highly technical.
Okay.
It's not stringing beads together. It's highly
Right.
technical. There's metal casting, and there's
Fantastic. Okay.
it's like a metal shop, but everything's tiny. It's like, right. So, and it's more soldering than welding, and it's but they have little shears and they have all that stuff to do.
Nice.
Yeah. And so anyway, so that brings in a lot of class income.
Okay.
Um I don't know. I don't think there's a lot because the thing about the jewelry thing is, yeah, most of it, you can't that shop you can set up in a room in your house kind of thing.
Yeah,
Except
it
doing it
doesn't
for
require a lot of space.
it doesn't require a lot of space like a wood shop. Right. And most of the equipment is reasonable. It's not
Mm.
like a CNC machine or a laser cutter. Well, although now there's glow forges and all those small things. So there's many people set up their personal laser cutting studios in their houses.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I'm sorry I didn't answer very well, but it's just it's nothing has popped up that I would say, oh, it's this sort of person, you know. It's definitely, young people are trickier because they need adult supervision,
Uh-huh.
and so there's a requirement that their kind of parent comes in with them,
Okay.
right? And so, which, then parents got to be there, but we do have a few of those, um, and we do have youth programming
Okay.
for kids, but right now it's really just a summer camp once a year.
Hmm.
Although we continue to work on it and things like that. And we've tried to provide things for homeschoolers, because
Yeah.
that's a big thing.
Yeah, that's a big
And
thing
so
too.
we've had some things for homeschoolers.
Yeah.
And so we continue to kind of hack at that as well for the youth market. I know that the Makerspace in the South Bay has a really strong youth program. And they make a lot of friggin' money. And so on that program, but I just don't think we have the population where we are. We're Northern California,
Yeah.
and so whereas the peninsula is just a massive metropolis,
Right.
uh, with a lot of money and
Yeah.
a
Of course.
lot of high tech kind of folks,
Hmm.
who I think they see um, this sort of program, like make programming for kids, much more importantly. But it's really just honestly, it's the population. There's just so many more
Right.
people.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I mean, so what is your population, I'd say, kind of more rural?
Well, we're not Santa Rosa is like 10 or 15 minutes from Santa Rosa or from Sebastopol, and it's a quarter of a million people, and
Okay.
so it's not a big city, it's a
Right.
small
Right. Right.
city, and then it gets dispersed because then you've got Petaluma, which if it's 100,000, and then Healdsburg, if it's like maybe 100,000. And so then it tapers way off, and then they're just small towns all over the place.
Okay.
So yeah, so a lot,
Okay.
so a lot of Sebastopol is semi-rural.
So outside of your like a jewelry side,
Mhm.
you think people coming in are, I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of the population. Like, are they, do you think they're mostly like either doing hobby things or they're like there to fix stuff or they want to go, okay, I want to make a product for my Etsy shop.
We have Etsy, yeah. So we have a lot of people who are, I would say, doing creative work. You've got the people coming in and, oh, I'm building furniture and I'm doing things for my house. Okay, so that's
Okay.
one of the population. So we have people making their cabinets. We have had professional wood shops here.
Oh,
We've
wow.
started
Okay.
a few companies in the area. But eventually it's like we have to go, well, you know what, commanding too much of the resources here and too much of the space in the shop
Mm.
and that.
Hmm.
And so, and you run into business, go
Yeah.
get your own
Yeah.
shop. And so we have to do that a few times. And then we have artists. Okay. So
Mm.
laser cut, I was teaching a young woman to add dimensionality to her graphic illustrations. People do, making wood cuts on the laser
Right.
cutter.
Right. Right.
I have a guy doing, he's etching out of old album covers and things like that and doing stuff like that. So there is a good amount of artists
Mm.
who are using the space for things. Okay.
Okay.
Another guy who was building these kind of like structures out of wood that were really, really cool. He won the first prize at the local Sonoma County Fair. And so there's artists. And there's Steve Thierry, he's a long-term member. He makes like objects. Some people just like to make.
Right. Right.
So,
Well, I mean, I know that feeling.
and exactly, they like to make things. So it's always like me. I'm always got it's like there's always another thing I want to make just out of
Mm.
curiosity. It's
Right.
not necessarily functionality,
Yeah.
but it's like, oh, what if I, now I'm playing around with LEDs, it's like, okay, so, and so and lighting stuff, because I've seen a lot of interesting lighting things. And then we have people who are just, yeah, the ones who don't, generate their own product, they don't last too long. So they'll learn, they think, I want to learn to do the laser cutter, and they're kind of more short-term members, because it's
Right.
like, it's because it's kind of funny when I teach the laser class. I'm always like, okay, so you must have a project you want to do, and they're like, no, and I go, okay,
The people who come in without sort of not a
yeah,
hobby, but a project in mind, usually
yeah. So
you
actually,
think
it's
they
kind of
don't probably stick around that much?
that always it's kind of interesting. It's like they take it, and it's like, oh, you didn't, there wasn't something you wanted to make. Actually, the other few classes ago, I had a guy. He's actually in Ecuador, and he's
Oh,
starting
okay.
a fab lab or something there, and he couldn't find any classes in in New Mexico or South America, Central America, and so he kind of took my class, which was a little tricky because he didn't speak any English, but I don't speak a whole lot of Spanish, but anyway, so it's that kind of now. Right now, I have a fellow just email this morning who is there's a organization here that works on the health of the river system here, and they're making this, like kind of, you've seen them, these layered map kind of
Yeah.
cut things, and so so like I said, oh, you got stuck with this project. And so I'm helping him to.
I mean, I saw we'd gone on holiday to Lake Tahoe and we saw those for sale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing.
It's
So
it's
doing a special one for their
yeah.
organization. So anyway, so I'm kind of, because they're another nonprofit, so of course we're helping them, and so there's those kinds of things. But then so anyway, but I had a kid in the last podcast. He wasn't working on anything. It's like, okay, and so with the jewelry stuff, we actually, there's jewelers who would come in there. You know what? It's when it gets toward the holidays, that's when
That's when people get a lot more because they think, oh, let me make something and
that's going to
um,
start now. It's
yeah,
Christmas presents and Etsy shops and
right,
crafts
right,
fairs, and it starts now, because
of course.
they better be starting now, because it's going to be here in no time. And so yeah, and then one of our other guys, he's doing, yeah, the Etsy thing. There's a guy who came over from the other Makerspace, and he actually has pretty active online business,
Okay.
where he's making, he just, it's always, it's like iPhone cases for a while, and then now he's doing people's pets on the laser
Mm,
cutter, as little figures and things like
okay.
that. So he's kind of a little Etsy entrepreneur.
Okay. So it sounds on the creative side, you have a pretty broad spectrum. I was looking at how Makerspace's models work. What value do they add to the community? Like in some sort of maybe isolated communities, they're almost like in England they have pubs in villages where people
Right.
just gather.
Yeah,
And
right.
so in some places like that, the Makerspace actually just serves as that sort of place where you kind of go hang out because you like making. But then in other places, it's actually an economic driver where everybody now needs a side hustle
Yeah.
and learning to make something. So when you're trying to make something to sell, so it's like so it's social, economic. But then I was running a children's makerspace, and so the third is actual like skills for career. So if I had to give you those three categories, like what do you think your makerspace falls under in
All
that respect?
three to an extent. And so people would come and hang out at the space. That's going to be the volunteers. So,
Right.
and they do. And, they are a little community. They come here on the weekends, they come and hang out and do stuff. And so that's what I would say would be our act. We don't really get a lot of, I would say, members just coming and hanging out,
Okay.
and amongst themselves. But there
Are
are
most of your
members.
volunteers fairly skilled, like technically speaking?
They
Would
all they all have it depends. There's Samir, he's a 3D expert, and he does our 3D printing stuff as well as our
right,
CAD stuff.
right.
Um and then I'm, I know how to use stuff pretty well, laser cutters, and I'm a woodworker, and so, but then there are other people who are like I just need people at the space to basically, it's basically reception. So it's like
Right,
people
right. Just,
or
hey,
get
welcome
or
in. Here's
process
all the stuff.
orders,
Yeah,
watch his video. So it's like,
of course.
so in that case, they're not so much. So it's a mix. It's probably half
Mm,
and half. But every and some the woodworking guy, he's a professional woodworker. The metal person is a sculptor,
okay.
and so and actually the knife making is a knife maker, so they can and the jewelers, they're both master jewelers, so it's actually more skilled people than it
Okay.
is just kind of like I just hang out here. And then and the thing is with like the Sunday guy, he's like a networking specialist, but he's really great to have, so when we do software stuff. And so they all I look at when I look at volunteers, I look at this, make sure they have some other skills,
Okay.
and so they all become quite useful. So for instance, he and I have one of my superstar volunteers, who is very skilled, but he gives a lot of donations. And he and I and the networking guy, we created systems for our expensive, like the laser cutters, because we have card keys to get into the space. So you can come and go whenever you like. And
Right.
so even if no one's there. And so you would just put your card key into one of our machines and it'll turn it on. And then it
Oh,
moves in
perfect.
the
Okay.
back end and all that sort of stuff. And so we can watch and we can now monitor the usage and things like that. And so the three of us worked on that system, so we have projects like that going on. So I like to create these little things in the space where the volunteers also work on things.
Mm, okay.
Um,
That makes
then
sense.
and now, but the other thing too is we have once a month we have a First Fridays event, which is
Okay.
basically an open house every month. We open it up to the community. We bring in local music. We have food, whole thing. We set up demonstrations, and that's been a very successful because people who's like, oh, want to check your space out, they'll come and check it out, and that has a growing community there that people look forward to it. So
Okay. That
and
makes sense.
so, and that one, it's, and like this
That's
happened
the,
at a
yeah.
former MTV guy, he's like, he's retired now, but he's moved up here. And so it was pretty high quality music. And yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And so we do that, to kind of keep in touch with the community.
Right.
I just started an initiative where we're going to, create find another organization, build something for them. Okay,
Okay.
that and deal with local businesses to sponsor it, and so bring the community together. And then that we're looking to connect with another community or organization in need in the area.
Okay.
Uh, Put together, all these, like I said, like we mentioned before, the talents of our team, and kind of get it sponsored, and then create these things for the community. So directly for
Okay.
the
Okay.
this.
And you're looking for like a local business or a commercial organization to sponsor it?
Sure. Whoever. So
Okay.
the idea is that, like, depending on what the project is, we'll probably be attracted to certain organizations or local businesses. Yeah.
Got you.
And then part of that program is like I was saying, I was in New York about 2 months ago. And so there's an organization called Collab in Brooklyn. And they are a kind of an ideation business. What they help people, they fabricate things, but it's more about creating things to help people. So for instance, the event we were at there's a company called ESOB. It's base spelled backwards, although that's not what it is. And they're the biggest welding equipment company in Europe. They
Okay.
don't have much of a presence here in reaching out and looking cool for the United States market.
Right.
Uh, so my friends connected them up with the Museum of Hip Hop. They had a hip hop designer create this drawing of this robot, and they fabricated an 18-foot steel sculpture.
Okay. Wow.
Thing, big boom box. It was impressive, and it's going to Paris. Is eventually where it's going to live, because with Paris, the Olympics this year, they introduced breakdancing into the Olympics,
Yeah.
and anyway, it's all part of this thing. And so
Nice.
so they did that. Now, the thing they did though is that when they made the sculpture, they picked 6 young artists and trained them to be welders to make the project. And
Okay.
it's an idea I want to incorporate into our program where whatever we do, I'm not sure
Uh-huh.
what lane it'll be in, is that we select young people who may not have the access to that sort of thing and
Uh-huh.
give them some training and have them help us build whatever this project is. So we
Yeah.
really, it's just a great community thing that we're trying to do. So anyway, so I have a team of three of us on with that right
Well,
now.
that's actually pretty cool. One of the things I've experienced in the makerspace world, I worked with kids. So it was kind
Right,
of easy to go, hey, I'm teaching you the skill and they're visualizing. But as we started to work with adults, like college going, a lot of them were like, hey, could we learn a skill here that actually gives us a potential career or maybe a lucrative side gig? So this sort of sounds along those lines, although of course they're trained artists. But do you find that that's where the maker space that both you have, but also in general, that maybe that we could contribute? Because schools, I don't know about the schools up there in Northern California, but schools here that we're part of, where my kids go to, there's no shop class anymore. There's no making anymore of any kind, really.
right, precisely. And it's an interesting thing because for us, of course, we've always skirted that. And there was another makerspace in Santa Rosa
Okay.
before up to COVID. And so that was kind of that their thinking. And I think the guy who was funding that was kind of his idea that they would do that sort of training. It didn't really work, I think, because well, they failed. So during COVID, they
Oh,
shut.
okay.
And honestly, that's why we're still here, is they shut down. And so among other things, but that was a big help. So we got some of their membership and some of their volunteers, and some of their equipment. So anyway, when we look at it, the thing is, we've got the community college here that does a lot of that. It's always we run into the thing where other people are doing that, and
Like
then
teaching, you mean hardcore vocational?
hardcore, like, okay, you're going to come out of this and you're going to be a professional welder, kind of.
Right, right, right,
And so I think and the thing is with the certifications, it's not just, oh, I'm going to give you a certificate and it's going to work.
right.
Yeah, kind of like regulations and things. So it's kind of tricky. So we haven't had to like go there. We're focusing more on probably what I would say more the hobbyist is the
Right.
hobbyist artist
Right.
is our primary
But I
market.
mean, that still really helps
Yeah.
people's, how they approach projects. Because while we were teaching, we kind of came up with this idea of what we call the motivational cliff,
Right.
which means that, and then with kids, it was easier to decipher. But I'll give an example. We had a 6-year-old in our class, and the first class they came in, and I generally start by asking the students, "What do you want to make?" And this kid goes, "I want to make a rocket, sit in it, and go to Mars." And it
Right.
was all in that like 1 hour classroom, right?
Right.
And of course, it's a child, so you go, that's not possible. But I was like, okay, persist with your idea. And then what he ended up doing was making like a small, flat, sort of rocket-shaped keychain.
Oh, right.
I
Yeah.
asked him, "Oh, are you happy with this?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah." I said, "So what's your plan now?" He says, "Every class I come, I'm just gonna work at making this bigger and bigger."
Right.
And of course, for his parent, the benefit was that the child was actually thinking through their idea,
Hmm.
applying it, and because they had this kind of what you would call ridiculous goal in mind, which was not practical, but that helped keep their motivation up to learn the technical skills, right?
Right.
So we could kind of see how just following a process, even though it resulted in failure from the first goal, still gave them technical skills. So I'm trying to work out if with adults that or hobbyists when they come in, because somebody who's never say built anything in their life comes in and says, I'd really love to make a proper table or a proper chair. That's a pretty high, and starting off by telling them about, all right, you need to learn all of these technical details is just
Right.
what we call going to make them jump off the motivational cliff.
That's right.
So I'm just trying to get a sense of like, because especially because you're saying that people who come in and are doing hobby work at your makerspace. I mean, do you find that this is the type of things that you encounter with some of the people who come in? And how do you maybe even sustain them? through that process?
I think I don't think we really don't. It's up to
Okay.
I mean, we don't really have any like mission statement or goal or, don't feel any onus on us to say, oh, we're gonna guide you through this process. Because it's kind
Okay.
of hard. If they lose interest in their thing,
Hmm.
you almost need, you'd have to have a program where you say, okay, here's your mentor
Right.
program. They're going to walk you through and take you along a journey of making, and so what's the problem? The problem is that's a lot of hands-on work. It's expensive.
Of
You got
course. Yeah.
someone, whatever, a trade rate to sit there and we're going to walk. So most, very, very few people would do that.
We'll do that. Yeah.
So that's kind of the problem with the model is just, and we've had this problem with doing some kids programming and things like that, like
Hmm.
continuous sessions. It's just like we got to pay somebody,
Right.
to do
Right.
this, and obviously you're going to be paying them to do this, and so then it's like, yeah, yeah, no, no, I don't think so. And so that's kind of the problem with programs like that. So really, yeah, we don't. No, it's like, okay, yeah, it's self-motivation, and so they have to be motivated to take things to where they want to go. And just like you and
Hmm.
myself, I believe we speak for each
Sure.
other. We
Yeah.
wanted to make, and and if it would be kind of funny, someone comes to me, it's like, oh, I want to make stuff like you, and I'm just like, there's a lot of things you have to learn,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, just electronics, programming, da da da, all this stuff, woodworking, tool use, all this sort of things, and then to learn it and get decent at it. So it's not like, because then you also learn the little. If you talk to any trade, if you work with any trade person, it's like they've got all these tricks and things, and they learned over the years.
Right.
And
Which
so,
they know through experience, like through
and
making a whole bunch of mistakes.
to your
Right.
point,
And
I want to make a nice chair for myself. It's
yeah.
like, well, chairs are a nightmare. One of the harder things to make. And so then you've got to learn about wood, you've got to learn about glues, you've got to learn about finishing, you've got to learn about tools. It's like you're asking for a lot to make
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
chair, because there's and structural issue, that would make it structurally sound and all that sort of stuff, and so that's kind of the trick. And it would be hard to guide someone through all of that. That's why things like laser cutters are great.
No, that I agree. I mean, we and that's super popular too because the transition from you kind of visualizing something and seeing like a graphic in 2D and
Right,
then like engraving it onto a piece of
right,
wood, for
right.
example, is very easy. And definitely like the software that something like say the Glowforce provides, right, with the camera
Yeah,
and everything,
yeah.
it does make life a lot simpler. So
Uh,
I think it's a great like what I call gateway device into making.
it is. I have one and I hate it, but
Yeah,
I'd
no,
rather
I
use
have
it
one too,
any day.
and
The cloud,
I
that
only like it
cloud
for the
thing.
software.
Yeah, it's just a cloud thing. It's just a nightmare.
Yes,
But the
yeah,
autofocus, the camera thing, all that stuff is nice. It's just like, just let me hit a button and do the last thing I did again. Okay? I don't need to connect to the cloud again. No,
yes.
just do the thing I asked you to
It
do.
asks you to do right, right.
So, and then it's like, oh, pay $80 more a month and it'll be fast. It's like, okay, I bought this machine and yeah.
No, no, and actually, just like you, I think when I want to do something more complex, like where I want to vary and stuff, and even though I have the Glowforge, I also have a full spectrum, but the old one, like
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
non-cloud one, which I have to adjust manually. And I actually prefer doing it on that because
Okay.
then I know exactly how to dial in all the settings, and I don't
Yeah.
have to rely on.
Right. No, yeah, the thing is, it's all done. Yeah, and the other thing with I used to the thing is now, a lot of my projects are large, and so
Right.
our laser cutter is 4 foot by 3 foot bed.
Oh, wow.
Like I just did a large scale diorama for a local restaurant of like a kelp garden with fish and things like that. And so the kelp are like 8 feet high, and so but of course did those pieces. But so a lot of the stuff I'm doing is too big for the Glowforge.
So
So
let me ask you a question because I think the area that we're going into is something that I'm actually pretty curious about with makerspaces because um I talk about the motivational cliff partly because like a gym or whatever, right? Any
right,
membership organization needs a continuous stream of
correct.
members who will because there's members exiting And then so you need a balance, right? You need a certain amount of members to make the whole thing financially viable.
Right.
And as long as you have a flow of that, it's great. But if you
Right.
don't have a flow, one of the reasons in the research that I've conducted, we found that there's usually because there's a whole group of super specialized or really expert makers in the space, and they make some really cool stuff. It's like the equivalent of going to the gym and seeing like professional bodybuilders, and then you're intimidated because you're like, hey, I'm just here to either like, just do something very basic or simple, but everybody else is doing something really complex, and maybe I'm not a good fit for this group. And so I'm kind of trying to tease out what what's happening with that. I mean, is sustainability a reason for us to maybe encourage more people to make? By kind of making it easy by using gateway devices like the Glowforge? Or should we get them more skilled up so
Right.
that they can work sustainably within the makerspace? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one part of that too is also the human element is that the individuals who are there at the makerspace are welcoming and helpful.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, we had a very difficult thing a few months back, maybe had 6 months back, where we actually had to demote someone
Oh,
from
wow. Okay.
one of our experts because they were just too intense,
Mm.
and just it's like no, if someone would do something wrong, they would kind of lose it, and I'm like no, everyone people here are not they're not experts. They're going to do like just last week someone ran a piece of
Right.
metal through the bandsaw. It's just like what the hell were you thinking? And so which he would have had a brain aneurysm.
Right.
So,
Right.
and so part of it is that it's a welcoming and helpful staff,
Mhm.
in the
Yeah.
maker that people don't feel intimidated. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, we're going to
Mhm.
help you. So I think that's an important aspect of it as well. It's on the other hand, the thing is, it's a lot of what you're talking about is getting them from the outside world in, you know,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so that's kind of really about marketing and community outreach and things like that, and always a challenge, to get kind of the word out there, and so one thing is, and so, but so the thing is like a lot of our, honestly, most of the classes we teach, it's always 101, right?
Okay.
It's always
Right.
basic.
Right.
Because what you have is oh, I want to learn how to do woodworking. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And they may have a project in mind, which is great.
Mhm.
But if you would, so it's basic, it's our woodworking 101. Okay.
Right, right. Just
And
get them started, let
that
them know how to
tells
be
out.
safe and do
But if you
basic
would
things.
say, okay, here's a class and we're going to be making a chair,
Hmm.
the interest would be
That drop off.
yeah, just be
But
dead.
I mean, okay, so maybe like let me shift directions
Especially
a
in
little.
our market. So it may be in the
Yeah.
South Bay where there's a bazillion people. Sure, it could be.
Right, 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 right.
So
But
it is market based too.
but you think this is but in general, like I was telling you earlier about how shop class has gone away.
Right.
So do you think this is like a maybe a societal shift? One of the things like if you ask person who's not into making, and we tell them, hey, would you like to buy a cup with like a picture on it?
Right.
And they go, yeah, of course. But if I, instead of buy, I use the word, hey, would you like to make a cup with
Right.
a picture on it? And they go, no, 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 I don't want to do that. And
Right.
and I kind of feel like maybe it's also not just semantics, but it's also how people perceive what is making versus what is not making.
Mhm.
People pay to go pick apples, for example.
Right. Right.
And I think that's a great hustle,
Right.
honestly, but I don't want to do that. Like I don't, I'll grow apples in my backyard if I have to. In your opinion, maker, you've been running the makerspace. So what's your take on this? Like how do we strike that balance between helping, clearly this is a different generation. There's sort of a public opinion out there now. I mean, in the US in general, we don't, it's now people keep saying this to me all the time. Hey, we don't make stuff here anymore.
Right.
Which I don't think is completely accurate. We make different things now. And I'm just trying to get your sense of what do you think is happening, or what's your take on that?
I think there is a bit of and I've kind of seen it with younger people. Because they're so tech office in a cube staring at a screen all day sort of
Right.
mode of living, that there is more outreach to say go make something,
Mm,
to get a hands-on experience and create something. The what's counter to that is that the current younger generations are experiential. Okay.
mhm.
So if you wrap it up in an experiential experience that this making is about, as opposed to making stuff, and then, that's kind of what they're into, and so it's really, I guess the thing is to, when you kind of reach out to people, is to make it like this is going to be an enriching experience
Right.
versus I'm going to go make a chair, right? It's like there's going to be this journey. What is what you say? It's not the end product. It's the journey. That's more
Okay.
interesting.
Okay.
And so I think one thing is to just talk about how it is an experience that you're doing, and it's a cool experience. Things that always help too is, for instance, knife making just sells out months in advance, but there is media out there. There's knife making shows,
Right.
and oh, that's cool. And 10 years ago or so, they used to be making shows on TV, and so, but those faded away. But I don't watch those channels like DIY and stuff like that. So one thing is, if obviously, if there was some movie that did something about making and it was like a cool thing, then
Yeah.
everyone would be interested in making, right? And so, it's like da da da, the movie does this thing and all of a sudden they're selling the crap out of something you can't get anymore because it was in
Mhm.
this movie. And so what you don't see, and what they make in movies is bombs. So, we don't offer that class. And so, there's that kind of stuff.
But I mean, so I had a guest earlier on the show, and they were talking about LARPs,
Uh-huh.
and they
Yeah.
originally in cosplay, and then they got into LARPing.
Yeah.
And what struck me about that is how inventive people get. Like one of the things that they find, so with cosplay, you're emulating, right? So there's like a box, and you kind of have to stick it in the box, and you're still being creative. But the LARPing part was quite interesting, and I'm trying to draw a parallel between sort of how people think about that and what we're talking about here, is because when you get into character, then you're like, okay, so I'm gonna do these activities, and so then the inventiveness starts, and they start making jigs and tools and costume changes, and so, but that's still within the hobby fantasy world space.
Right.
They're still learning skills, so it's experiential, like we discussed. But I'm trying to, I guess I'm trying to reflect on that and say, is there a way for us to maybe leverage that thought process, but more for like practical things? Um,
Well, they're kind of gathering around an experience. This
mm,
LARPing, that
definitely.
our makerspace started out of a Burning Man community. Okay.
Okay.
So they came together to build these things for Burning Man. Okay. So
Mm,
they would have Burning Man costume night to make the things, da, 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 and to modify their bikes and all the lighting stuff. And so that went on for quite a few years. And so that's where we actually came from, was that kind of
okay.
like, you know. This current year, one of our members, Derek, he made a crazy beautiful, did the whole building at Maker Faire from our space with the CNC machine. So, so kind of, there's that sort of thing. And but you're right. If there's, but it's so that, like you say, the making for the LARPing and the making for the Burning Man was sort of a tool for them to express themselves in this other experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and so that's kind of thing. It's like, okay, what's that thing that people need to make something for, right? That's going to appeal to a bunch of people, and in both of these cases, it's a physical event that they're,
Event, correct.
you know, Halloween. that's another
Of
actually
course, that's a big one.
making one where
Yeah.
people now I don't I can't say that we've had people come to us because they want to do well. Actually, they've come to us that they want us to make stuff for them for Halloween. But that's probably an annual one where people will come together to say, hey, we're doing this thing, and we want to deck out our house, and there's all this stuff. So on the downside of that, there's so much. That's such a huge industry, and there's so much stuff that are made for them, right?
Mm,
Like you're not
yeah.
going to go to Costco and it's like, oh, here's the LARPing section. Right? No. Or here's the Burning Man section. No. But there's the Halloween section,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, for sure.
even for the holidays too, that there would be that sort of thing. But like the December holidays, but not so much. And like I do laser cut ornaments every year, but I don't think I've ever had anyone in there doing that. So although I use it as an example all the time. So, but yeah, the problem with that is with laser cut ornaments, it's actually pretty cheap to do it on Etsy now. So, to get it done. So that's the other aspect of it. Because it's unless they really want to make stuff, you know,
Hmm.
there are outlets to get custom cut now with Etsy customized stuff. Is
Yeah.
expensive.
So
So anyway, but it would be, you're right. So it would be for that kind of community. It's like we're
yeah,
going to go do this thing and we need to make stuff for this thing.
this
Okay.
thing, correct.
Yeah, right.
So
That
what
would
what do you think sort of next for, I mean, you've been in the makerspace movement, if I would call it. Like,
yeah.
so in your opinion, what do you think's next in the makerspace movement? What's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, what we're seeing now is it's interesting because there's an event called Open Sauce, which happens in the Bay Area the past 2 years. And so they are kind of the new maker fair. Okay.
Okay.
Um, the interesting thing about open source is the focus is not the making stuff is on the side. It's in and so
Okay.
their golden audience and the people they invite are online influencers. Okay. And so they're making stuff and they're putting it on their social media outlets, YouTube mostly, and things like that. So that's kind of interesting, and that's who speaks at the thing. That's where the exclusive party is for those people. I forget what they call them, and things like that. So that's kind of a shift because from the Maker Faire model
Hmm.
that we were involved with, and so I think the thing is, as like what you're involved in, is that people are making things to create content, you know. So like
Right.
that's with Jimmy DiResta, that's Jimmy's business is doing all that sort of stuff and so many more. And so then these people come, and even people, like Adam Savage from Mythbusters, it's all online now. And so I think so people are using their maker skills and to create content for people sitting at home, sort of like TV. And so that's kind of a thing, in terms of, people coming in, it's like, what's the next thing they're going to make? It's like, I think it's what you see is people doing that. So it's really kind of the conjunction of the online world and the thing world. Now, the one thing too, as with the reason why the maker thing kind of blew up and happened was because personal fabrication technologies exploded, right? When you look at a laser cutter, 20 years ago, it was like, this is, I can just get one of those, but now it's like, buy one, go for it, put in your house, you can use that.
Yeah.
3D printers, $200, even you can get a small CNC for not much, under 1,000. So those things didn't exist,
Hmm.
when I like, and they're a lot of fun, right? To make
Yes.
things on.
Of
They're
course.
cool shit, da da da. You can download, there's a whole community think of her, thingiverse on that. You can download stuff. It's nice, like we're gonna be making guitars at the Makerspace soon. And there's just like stuff that's like you wouldn't be able to do before that's kind of happening. So there's always that emerging technology thing.
Hmm.
But in terms of making, it's like, what I think we're in pretty good shape with the tools that we have. I can't see what might be the next thing, because certainly tools like that will make something happen.
Right.
And in terms of microcontrollers, I've been in electronics my entire career, and it's just like in the past, 15 years that those have, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, where there's microcontrollers. But more importantly, there have always been microcontrollers. But what there wasn't was a microcontroller that was geared toward, you know, experimenters and hobbyists, but like, but they also offered the community. So for instance, if you want to
Mm.
do something with an Arduino, you're not starting from scratch. 20 years ago, good luck,
You're
buddy.
starting to say,
You're on your own. There were no libraries. If you wanted to do it's like, you got to do it yourself,
yeah,
and all that sort of stuff. It was very, very onerous to do a project. So, to your point too of how do you get people into this, it's just like it has to be easy, you know. And then like I've been doing some work now with Raspberry Pi Picos, which are kind of like an Arduino,
mm,
but they don't have the support like an Arduino does, so it's a little harder, it's the right tool for certain things, but it's like, God, there's just so much stuff on the Arduino platform. So anyway, but the Arduino is a big thing. So there are these kind of technologies that came along, but
mm,
so okay, but now what's they're making the next microcontrollers, but it's just faster, more Wi-Fi stuff and things like that, and so which once you get along with that, then it's a deeper dive to get into that sort of to use those features of the new things.
sure.
So I'm not sure. I don't know. There might be another thing coming that's like, oh, this is really cool.
And I like where you're going with this, and I kind of feel the same way as well. I've attended a few different like meetups around the Los Angeles area,
Right,
and especially here, you can see influencers are making products now because
right,
from a business point of view, they have the eyeballs.
right,
And because they have the eyeballs, they're able to market things. And I think people should learn to make, and they should
right,
keep making.
right,
So, a lot of this is about deciphering what's going to happen next, so that we can leverage it in order to make or
right.
keep making. So that's what I think.
Craft. So it's sort of like the ins and outs of crafting. Because
Mm.
making is just a little more technical crafting.
Yes.
And so, I don't know, 20 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, like knitting became very popular. Is it still
Um,
popular? I don't know, but so that you get these sort of waves of like this is kind of a fun thing to do. And I think a lot of it's inspiration, you go to because now if you go to a craft fair or something like that, there's like a lot of hip stuff, and it's going to
mm,
make you want to make it right yourself and
of
get into it
course.
yourself. Because of course there's always this thing. It's like, oh, I want to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so there's that kind of sort of thing as well. So the thing is about it's just at the end of the day, it comes down to inspiring and people to kind of want to make stuff. And a
Yes.
lot of that is just seeing cool stuff. So a lot of
I
that is
agree.
the existing maker audience making cool stuff, and getting it out there. And that's kind of where the influencer thing comes, is to
Yes.
make stuff,
Make
get
stuff.
on these platforms. Your job is to make sure you're getting eyeballs to see this stuff, right? And to get that seed in people's head that's like, oh, I want to do that. And I think by doing that, it's like say you're going to have a fun experience, even to making this thing and doing these things, and maybe even you're going to connect to new people and new friends. So that are in this world, and then you can share your projects, as well. And so there's even that thing. It's like it's like an opportunity for people like what you're doing with your thing. It's just like meeting makers, and here's the cool stuff that we make.
Cool. Hey, Joe, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing your opinions and your time with us, telling us what do you think about the Makerspace movement and sharing more about Chimera Arts. I hope we can have you back on the podcast to maybe talk about things that you make as well.
That would be great. I do make a bunch of stuff. So awesome. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you.